The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, South Florida. Welcome to another Ask the Experts. We're here live with you today. We'll be taking your phone calls at 561-623-9429. We have literally, I'm going to say, probably had close to 70 questions this week, and we'll try to get as many of those in as we can. And you can, if you're watching us on the TV version, you can send us a note. We have a chat line. There's so many ways that you can get to us. We do this show now in 12 cities. This is our number one show. It gets more phone calls. It gets more text. It is our highest rated show. Let me welcome to the man who helped make it the number one show, attorney Robert K. of K. Bender Rimbaum. Good afternoon, attorney.
Good afternoon, Steve.
Boy, it's amazing. A lot of people, a lot of shows do pre-recorded shows in case there's a problem. Not us. We just dive right into a live show, and whatever happens, happens. And it happened today. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, Robert.
Very nice. Hope you did too.
Yeah, they just aren't ever long enough, but we're right back at it. You know what we're going to do is something a little different today. Not to worry, we've done this before. We're getting a lot of emails saying that we don't announce your schedule for the month enough. So we're going to do it towards the beginning of the show and in the second half of the show, if that's okay, Robert.
That's certainly fine with me. Sadly, this month being the holidays, there's less to report as far as classes that we've got going on. But the ones that we do have should be interesting to those who want to participate. On Tuesday, December 12th, from 11 o'clock to 2 p.m., we're doing both condominium and homeowner association board member certification. So both areas will be included in this one, which is why it's a little bit longer. That one will be on Zoom, and Alan Schwartzide from our Orlando office will be the instructor on that. Then on Wednesday, December 13th at 11:30 until just 12:40, not a real long one. Covenant enforcement for community associations. That's always interesting for many board members. Kirsten Hens from our Tampa office will be instructing on that one. And then on Tuesday, December the 19th, from 1 o'clock to 2:30, we have an open forum Q&A with Alan Schwartzide. So it'll be one where whoever's calling in will ask the questions, much like the show we're doing today. So that's another Zoom opportunity on Tuesday, December the 19th from 1 o'clock to 2:30. You can go to our website, kbrlegal.com, click on the calendar to choose the event you want, and click on the event to register so you can get the Zoom information. And that's what we've got upcoming for December.
Okay, we'll announce this also in the second half of the show. Robert, what makes K. Bender Rimbaum?
What makes it what?
makes it so? Why is it so special? I mean, this
Oh,
year,
okay.
community association law firms in the state of Florida. Why is that?
Well, there's a number of reasons why I think that our firm is one of the most special of ones that are available. And that, first of all, we have many, many years of accumulated experience in the field. We have a large percentage of our attorneys that deal with our associations on a day-to-day basis are board certified by the state of Florida. Uh, we have not only board certified in community association, we also have an attorney board certified in construction defect litigation. Uh, in addition to the knowledge and expertise that we have, we are, as a culture, oriented to providing service to our clients in a fast, efficient, cost-effective manner. And we know that when you reach out to your attorneys, you're not looking for uh, a friendly chat. You're not looking for long-winded explanations and in-depth legal theory, but you want answers to your legal questions, and you want them in a way that are readily understandable to a layperson. Or you don't need somebody to translate what we're telling you. You know, that's our basic philosophy. We also were pioneers of a collection method that defers the fees and costs that our clients will incur in pursuing delinquent assessments. We started that when we started the firm in 1992. At the time, there weren't any other attorneys that worked in that fashion, and we've been doing that since day one. So those are some of the reasons why I think K. Bender Rambam is special. Plus, we've got 4 offices in Florida, in Pompano, Palm Beach Gardens, Tampa, and Orlando. We also have a meeting center in Miami. So we are accessible to most parts of the state, at least the southern half of the state, from Tampa, Orlando down. Plus, we reach out from those offices as well. And that's, in a nutshell, what we have to offer.
And customer service is so important to you.
Extremely. You know, we take the calls we get each day. We respond to them as quickly as is appropriate for the issue being raised. We respond to emails the same day, at least to acknowledge receipt. And if we can provide the answer being sought the same day or within a day or two, that's what we strive to do.
You know, I go to a lot of offices, attorneys' offices, and you come in and there's no one at the desk, and you're sitting there and you're waiting and you're waiting. No one's at the desk. I have never been to your office that there was not only one, but sometimes two and three um, staff people
Well,
right there as you walk in.
2 is normal. If there's not 2, if somebody might be out sick or somebody's having lunch, but 2 is our normal reception.
That's very amazing, especially now with people being such short of staff. Well, we have got a lot of questions. Anything new you want to relate it? Any new laws? Anything new going on in community
Well,
association?
there are no new laws in that the legislature isn't going to meet until January, and then they'll have 2 months of doing what they do before they likely complete it and get to the association-oriented stuff. It's typically toward the end of the session before we have anything substantive to report on. There's always proposals and things going on behind the scenes, but talking about those can be confusing because a lot of them never happen. So it's sometimes not in the best interests of people to hear about what's been proposed as opposed to what's actually being considered. So at this point, it's a little early in the legislative session to get too deep into the weeds on that. Next month, we might have a little more to talk about.
Okay, we'll look forward to next month. Let's go to our text. Let's start off with Sophia in Boca Raton. She said, I live in an HOA. See, we're getting them used to telling us if they're HOA and condo now.
That's very helpful.
Yes, it is. Makes a big difference. She said, "Is our board obligated in the statutes which requires a notice when payment is due? Shouldn't that be spelled out somewhere?"
Well, actually, it is. All of the statutes, and 718 for condos, 719 for cooperative, 720 for HOAs, all provide and have for the last couple of years that before an association is allowed to pursue a delinquent account and recover attorney's fees for that delinquency, they have to send a 30-day notice to the owner outlining the specific assessments that are not paid by month, if they're monthly, by quarter, if they're quarterly, complete breakdown of unpaid assessments. And in addition to that, if interest accrues, they have to identify that. There is a form in each of the statutes substantially what the notice needs to state. And as a practice here, we review every matter that's turned over to make sure that that prior notice, it's called a notice of late assessment, and some call it a NOLA, has been properly and timely sent before we would start any collection. So the short answer to the question is yes, the association has to provide written notice of the delinquency before any formal collection activity is supposed to take place.
Let's go to our chat board. Let's go to Susan. She said, "What might our no dog condo?" We got it right up there for you. What might our no dog condo? We have lots of residents with documented ESAs do when a one-time guest arrives with dogs, who is the guest claims are ESAs, but the guest has no documentation with them.
Well, that's always a difficult prospect for associations to address when they're, we'll call it more of a no pet than a no dog, because an emotional support animal wouldn't be considered under fair housing laws to be a pet. And calling it a no dog, well, many as emotional support animals are dogs, and they have to be allowed in if the owner qualifies. When someone is a guest and they're making the same claim, the safest course for the association to follow would be to err on the side of allowing them entry and accepting their word as to their qualification. But with the caveat being that the association should inform the owner that if the guest desires to return at another time, it will be necessary for them to submit the appropriate documentation to identify how the animal qualifies under the fair housing laws, the same way a resident would have to, and address it in that fashion. Now, the other problem that comes with this is on the next visit, if the guest shows up with the dog again and does not have the documentation, there is a substantial risk to the association of a potential claim of discrimination if they say, well, you were told before you needed to provide documentation and you didn't, so we're not going to let you in. The board's going to have to decide if it wants to take on that kind of risk in denying a guest that's coming for the day. It's difficult to enforce a violation that only occurs for a couple of hours and then is gone, because you can't go to court on something that has already happened and isn't happening at the moment. And so that leaves very little recourse to the association from an enforcement perspective. One possibility would be to have a fine imposed each time that occurs. And for condominiums, unfortunately, fines are not collectible as an assessment against the individual unit, so they become more difficult to enforce. In homeowners associations, if they're over $1,000 and the documents identify that they can be an assessment, then that's a possible stronger method of enforcement. But homeowners associations are less likely to have this particular problem than condominiums. So unfortunately, Susan, what you've described doesn't lend itself to an easy resolution for the association in addressing the guest without the potential risk. So the board would have to decide if it wants to take that on. And they certainly should discuss this with their attorney before they do anything.
We just got a text, a very lengthy text. Apparently, a lot of their residents listen to your show, which is nice, and a lot of good information. As you know, we have a lot of costs that have gone up, and residents get upset with us about it. Maybe you can explain a little bit about all these rising costs, that it's not our fault.
I don't know I don't necessarily know what your costs are, but in general, we know that after COVID, there was a period of time in this country where inflation was running much higher than it had been for literally decades before. And that has since been brought under control. But the problem with inflation is when costs of things go up during inflationary times, when that inflation cools, they don't go back down. So they stay at the higher levels that they went up to. Many, many things have gone up in the last couple of years to levels that we obviously hadn't seen for some time, and they're unlikely to go down again. And associations are generally obligated to assess for everything they need to function within the requirements of the governing documents. And the governing documents spell out what the association is required to do, what it maintains. And the board is required to establish a budget that will provide sufficient funds to cover those expenses and then assess for them during the course of the year and the periodic payment schedule that the documents provide for, generally monthly, but sometimes quarterly, rarely yearly. That's more of a HOA situation. Condominiums won't be any less frequently than quarterly. So, insurance is another driving force for significant increases in association operations. I think most people in Florida are aware of the situation with hazard insurance, with windstorm insurance. In fact, all insurances in general have continued to go up at historic levels each year. And for condominiums, there's a statutory requirement that the association maintain insurance, and the insurance has to be at levels that provide for replacement costs. And those are very expensive policies, and that's a big driving force for many of these associations' increases in their operations. Down the road, condominiums that are 3 stories and higher are looking at potentially significant increases because of the requirements of the structural integrity reserve studies and in the milestone inspection requirements and the certifications. So these are things that are coming down the road.
I know. Just look at gas prices, and if you look at
gas prices have come down. they're at 2-year lows.
You know what? That's funny you said that, because who would 3-4 years ago when we said gas is at $3, it's come down.
That's the exception. That's the exception to what I said. When prices go up, they tend not to come down, and gas prices something that's a little more volatile in that respect. And some of that has to do with the fact that this country is one of the largest, if not the largest, oil manufacturer in the world. So they didn't used to be.
Well, a lot of those letters, Robert, were talking about the restaurants that at the community, how their prices have gone way up. But again,
Absolutely.
food prices have gone up, gas has gone up. Okay, maybe
So
it'll get
gas is
better.
something you can't say has gone up anymore because it came back down.
That's right.
Food prices, unfortunately, some of them, like eggs, were up, but that was because there was some kind of issue with chicken shortages, but that has since been resolved. So egg prices have come down. There are little things like that. There are ups and downs, but as an overall, cost of wages is something that had to go up when inflation goes up, and when some wages go up, the other side of that coin is the people paying the wages have to increase prices to cover the wages. So it's just the way of the economy.
Let's go to Robert from our chat line. What is the definition of occupancy in the 55 plus? What's the
Well, it's
new
not a new
law?
law.
The new law.
It's not a new law. The 55 and older law came into being in 1988, and that's housing for older persons, to allow an association to basically discriminate against families with children. In 1988, families with children 18 or under age 18 became a protected class in the Constitution, both federally and in the state. And this is an exception to that protection if a community will qualify as housing for older persons. And as it's evolved through the years, this requires there be at least 80% of the dwelling units that are occupied by at least one person who is over the age of 55 years. And that would be the permanent occupant. Unoccupied or units that don't have a permanent occupant over 55 are viewed differently. If they're unoccupied, they don't count toward the total. If they don't have somebody over 55, then you're limited to no more than 20%. The state law requirement, though, is if your governing documents require occupancy to be at least one person 55 and older, that needs to be 100%. The 20% is the allowance for situations of inheritance. Let's say the person over 55 passes and the only persons left are under 55. That's what the 20% is for, not for the board to say, well, we still have a little room, so we're going to allow you in, but we might not allow somebody else in because they're not 55. So, what's a permanent occupant generally is more than 6 months in a day.
That makes sense. Let's go to Robert in Pompano. We are in a condo, and the board of directors has decided to build a tent for termites. And they want the owners to leave for the building for 3 days. Several do not want to leave their unit. What can the board do to get them out?
Well, it's a difficult situation when there's termites, and obviously the building has to be fumigated appropriately to make sure that there is no more ongoing issue, because the structural integrity could be compromised if it's not treated. Any owner that refuses to leave, the unfortunate only recourse for the association is to bring legal action in the courts to obtain an injunction or an order from the court that compels them to vacate the unit during the time of the fumigation. This doesn't happen overnight, and that could create potential financial damages to an association for the delay. And that's a potential damage to pass along to the owner that is refusing to cooperate with the legal requirement of the association that they vacate for this period of time, and obviously properly prepare their units for the fumigation in accordance with the instructions of the exterminator.
Okay, we're going to go to a break. The phone number is 800-974-0680. K. Bender Rimbaum. We're here with attorney Robert K. If you'd like to call in, the number here is 561-623-9429. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to go over the schedule again. Cut rather short for the month of December because of the holidays, but we'll go over that again. We'll be right back.
K. Bender Rimbaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On kbrlegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rimbaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rimbaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rimbaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
We are back. You know, Robert, we get so many letters, so many texts in every month in regards to K. Bender Rimbaum. And I just want people to understand that I think you give out more of your time, free time, to educate the public, whether it's classes, your certification classes, shows like this. I've never seen a law firm that gives so much of their time away to educate the public, and we just want to thank you for that.
I thank you for saying so. I think it's important that we share what we can.
Well, you definitely walk the walk, that's for sure. Okay, we're going to do it's rather short this month, but it's because of the holidays. What are your different classes that you've got coming up this month, Robert?
As you've identified, there's only a few this month. So next Tuesday, December 12th, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. via Zoom, is a condominium and homeowner association board member certification class. So this will work for new board members in either condominiums or HOA. Alan Schwartzide of our Orlando office will be instructing that. And then on Wednesday, December 13th, from 11:30 to 12:40, covenant enforceability for community associations will be taught by our Tampa attorney, Kirsten Hens, also via Zoom. And then on Tuesday, December 19th, from 1 o'clock to 2:30 p.m., we're going to have an open forum Q&A, much like we're doing here. Any questions that they might have, the participants will decide what we'll be talking about that day. Alan Schwartzide from Orlando will be hosting that. Go to our website at kbrlegal.com and click on the calendar and choose the event you want to participate in, get signed up for the Zoom link, and then you'll be good to go.
Do your board certification meetings, do those go on during the day or early in the evening?
This one's at 11 o'clock to 2 p.m., so that's a daytime one.
Today. I think there's one today. Is that already
Today,
over with?
It was an expo in I'm not even sure where it was, in Fort Lauderdale, I think.
This is
But
Condo
that's over.
HOA board member certification, the 7th, but I didn't know
That,
if
that
that's
that's
today.
over already.
Okay,
That happened today at the convention.
okay. Let's get
I
back
don't have
to,
that one on my list to give you more specificity.
I've got the inside. Okay, so Ashley in Boca, she is HOA. President and property manager decided to remove a tree without a permit. Landscaper did not meet the code qualifications, and we are going to be fined for that. All bills paid for the last 12 months, as we think there are fines that we didn't know about. I think we are being mismanaged.
Well, the expenditures of the association for the past 12 months, and in fact for several years prior to that, are part of the official records of the association that are open to access and inspection by any requesting unit owner by submitting a written request in the format that the board has established as appropriate. It could require certified mail, it could require general mail, it could just be okay with email. You have to know what your board requirements are. If you don't know and can't find out, then the safest approach would be send a certified letter and a regular mail letter, and then attach a copy of it to an email. So use all three to get that. Then the association has 10 business days to provide an access opportunity to you. It's not your choice as to when it'll be the association's choice. If that date and time is not good for you as requesting, then you can request a different date, which the board, and then you and the board would try and work out a mutually convenient date. But the 10-day opportunity is no longer part of the equation. So that information should be available, and if it isn't, if they refuse or do not provide access or do not maintain the records you're looking for, that could be statutory violations. Did you identify if this was an HOA or condo?
HOA.
Okay, so HOA, the only option would be to take it to court. There is a potential minimum damage of $500, but obviously court action would be required to establish any damages for the refusal of the association to provide access to its official records.
Robert, would you explain, you have a lot of attorneys in your office that are board certified. Will you explain to the listeners out there what that means?
Well, board certification is something that's been around for this area of the law for just over 5 years. And what's required is a minimum number of years of experience in primarily doing general association representation. And it requires a higher level of continuing legal education than what is otherwise required of an attorney under the rules of the Florida Bar. It also requires passing an exam that will identify the skills and knowledge and expertise that is part of what we do as practitioners. And in the whole state, I think the number is currently just over 200 since the program began. And in our office, I think we have 9 or 10, and out of 20 attorneys. So that's a pretty high percentage given how many there are in the state of Florida.
Yes. Oh, this is going to be probably one of my favorite texts to read. This, it says, Robert, I am so upset with you. We had to move our card game because so many of the ladies listen to your show. We also had to move up what time we go to dinner on Thursday because of your show. So if you want to apologize to them, go right ahead. But you made them move their card game, which means they have to go out for dinner later the first Thursday of the month.
Well, I do apologize, but I also have to admit I don't control that.
That's true. That's true. It seems like that's like the third letter we've gotten. People who have, they're all women who have a card game that listen to the show while they're playing cards. I think that's pretty nice.
Well, hello, ladies. I hope you're all
Yes.
winning.
Okay, let's go to Calvin in Palm Beach. He says, I live in a condo. Do you notice how they're all now starting to tell us if they're in a condo or an HOA?
That's very helpful.
Took us 10 years, but we did it. He says, I live in a condo where there is no pets allowed. Even though there are rules for support animals, what are the rules on a second dog that they call a support animal?
Well, the fair housing rules that he references are written in a way that are leaning in favor of the owner and not the association. There is no number limit of how many emotional support animals an individual can have and still qualified as emotional support animals. What's required for each animal is that there be supporting documentation from a medical provider, a qualified medical provider, that the animal is necessary, the specific animal is necessary so that the person, there's a major life function that would be affected without the animal. And it is unfortunately not uncommon for there to be multiple animals involved in emotional support issue.
Okay. If you'd like to call in, you have a question for Robert. The phone number here is 561 623 9429. That's 561 623 9429. Let's go to Holly and Davy. What can we do if the board is using selective enforcement?
Well, that's a tough question because the facts are important in framing the appropriate answer. Selective enforcement is actually a legal defense if the association is seeking to enforce what it considers a violation of the covenants or the rules, and the person who is subject to the enforcement action identifies that there are other owners that are doing substantially the same thing. That would be a bona fide selective enforcement defense. In other words, the association's treating one owner different than another. Selective enforcement is generally not considered an affirmative cause of action. In other words, an owner can't sue the board saying you're selectively enforcing and you need to stop. It's just a legal defense.
Okay.
So what owners would have to do in that situation, if the board is doing that, it would require more of a political response than a legal one, where they have to remove those individuals from being the board and put in people who will properly run the association from within their community. They could either do that by recall or at their annual election, whichever is more appropriate for their circumstances. And then that also will require a support of enough owners in the community to the concept and individuals willing to serve that otherwise will be doing the right thing. So it's not necessarily a simple answer, but unfortunately it's it is what it is.
Okay. Let's go to Jack in Boynton. He is in a condo. Is it true a fine can never become a lien?
In a condo, that is true based on the way the statute is written, because currently Chapter 718, 303 says a fine may not be an assessment. In homeowner associations, it doesn't have that language. In fact, it allows for fines of over $1,000 to be an assessment for the same violation. And each day can be a separate occurrence, a separate violation, subject to a separate fine. So if you would need 10, and if you have $100 a day, you would need 10 days of fines to equal $1,000, which would then be available to be an assessment, but only if the covenants for the community identify a fine as an assessable item. It's not automatic.
Okay. Susan in Hollywood, how do I get our board to stop kicking repairs down the road, especially after the tragedy that happened in Surfside?
Well, unfortunately, there's two choices there. One is bring a lawsuit to compel them to do what's required, basically breach of fiduciary obligation, breach of fiduciary duty of the board in failing to maintain, which can be an expensive proposition. Not that repairs that are needed aren't going to be expensive, but legal action against your own association can be expensive, because the association's also got to pay its own defense costs, which you're paying a part of. The other method is the same as what I described for the selective enforcement problem, and that is politically, in changing the people who are on the board to those who are more like-minded with those who want to get these repairs done. Politically, that's a problem in many communities because, as we know, repairs that are needed can be substantially expensive, and owners tend to not want to be spending money that way. Oftentimes, they don't have the money available to them to cover large assessments. So that's what makes the political issue a little more difficult. But politically is generally considered the best option economically for an association to pursue if they can accomplish it.
This is Clark in Coral Springs. He is the president of his board. Reserves is he wants to know, is legislation going to pass on mandatory reserves before the new year?
Well, nothing's going to happen before the new year this year, because the legislators are not in session.
Right.
As it currently stands, for budgets that are adopted after December 31, 24, there are certain reserve requirements that will no longer be available to be waived for condominiums that are 3 stories and higher. For condominiums that are not 3 stories, they're going to have pretty much the same reserve situation for the most part. There are some items that might affect them as well, but that's something that you need to get with your own association attorney about, dealing with the specifics of your particular condominium.
He had a follow-up here wanting to know, can the board override if the owners refuse the reserve fund?
So the best part about that question is, I think that there's a misunderstanding of the obligation to present the question in the first place. The statute provides that every budget that's adopted by a condominium association must have full reserves. And then it provides the opportunity for the board to present to the owners the option of waiving all or a part of those full reserves. And that's supposed to take place prior to the beginning of the fiscal budget. Many communities don't do it in that order, but it's what the statute requires. So if the board chooses not to present the owners with the option of waiving or reducing reserves, it doesn't have to do it. So it isn't a matter of presenting to the owners the question and then overriding it. If you don't present the question in the first place, then you'll have full reserves. It's generally the board that does not want to have full reserves that's going to present the question.
Well, believe it or not, we've come to another end to the show. I apologize for the people on hold and the ones who wrote their questions in. We'll get them on next time Robert's with us. He's with us the first Thursday of every month for the entire hour. And again, we want to thank you, Robert, your firm, for giving up their time. And this is our 10th year. It's a long time. Wow. Anyhow, let's give everybody your phone number and especially your website address.
To reach us at 800-974-0680 for all of our offices. You can write us at info@kbrlegal.com or go to the website, kbrlegal.com, and just, surf around. You'll see there's a contact box on the front page if you want somebody to contact you. There are articles of topical interest under the resource tab, under Legal Morsels or Rembaum's Association Roundup. Many, many articles in there that are constantly being updated. So check that out as well. And have a very happy and healthy holiday season and new year. And look forward to talking to you at the beginning of 2024.
You're the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was attorney Robert K. Bender Rembaum, Community Association firm. And we'll be back with you again next Thursday with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Experts show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.